On a cool spring morning in May of 2008, the small mountain town of Pine Hollow, Colorado, was buzzing with its usual quiet rhythm. Nestled against dense pine forests and old logging roads, this was the sort of place where doors were left unlocked. Everyone knew each other's names, and a missing teenager was considered almost unthinkable. That teenager was Jonah Maddox. Before we begin, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another deep dive into the darkest and most mysterious true crime cases. 17 years old, tall and lanky, with a mop of chestnut hair, Jonah was known for his easygoing smile and adventurous spirit. Friends described him as the kid who could wander into the woods with nothing but a backpack and come back with stories no one else could dream up. But on May 8, 2008, Jonah walked out of his family's home and never came back. At first, it didn't set off alarms. Jonah was independent. He loved the outdoors, often disappearing for hours, sometimes days, exploring trails, camping out by the river, or sketching in his notebook under the stars. But when 2 days passed without any word from him, his family knew something was wrong. The Maddox family contacted local police. Flyers went up across town, grocery stores, gas stations, church bulletin boards. His face, smiling in a school portrait, stared back from every telephone pole. Search parties scoured the woods and riverbanks. Helicopters scanned the tree line. Bloodhounds picked up his scent, but lost it abruptly on the outskirts of town. It was as if Jonah had walked off the face of the earth. For 7 years, his family lived in limbo. They never moved away, never stopped searching. His father, David Maddox, often told reporters, "I believe my boy's still out there somewhere. I'll never stop looking." The community began to heal, or at least they tried to. Some whispered theories of a runaway. Others suspected foul play. But with no body, no evidence, and no answers, Jonah's case went cold. And then, 7 years later, an unthinkable discovery would reopen the wound in the most horrifying way imaginable. It was August 2015 when police received a call from a group of developers. They were preparing to survey an abandoned cabin deep in the woods just outside Pine Hollow. The cabin was notorious among local teenagers, a place of dares, ghost stories, and late-night beer runs. Once a hunting lodge, it had sat vacant for nearly 2 decades, left to rot under layers of moss, vines, and broken windows. When the developers entered, they found the structure barely holding together, dust coating the furniture, raccoons nesting in the kitchen. But something about the living room caught their eye. The stone fireplace, once the centerpiece of the cabin, was crumbling, and from inside the chimney came a smell. Not the smell of damp ash or mold. This was something else, something foul, heavy, unmistakable. Police were called immediately. When officers arrived, they shone flashlights into the narrow chimney shaft. At first, all they could see was fabric, tattered denim, a faded sneaker. As the beam climbed higher, the truth revealed itself. Inside the chimney, wedged tightly and upside down, was the body of a young man. The officers at the scene stood in silence for a long moment. Even in their line of work, it was rare to find something so disturbing, so unexpected, and so inexplicable. The body inside the chimney was badly decomposed. Time and nature had taken their toll. Clothing was faded, bones partially exposed, and the smell of decay lingered through the cabin. But there were still enough details to tell a story. The victim was dressed in jeans, a flannel shirt, and sneakers, clothes consistent with the style worn by teens in Pine Hollow years earlier. One shoe had fallen off and lay in the ashes at the bottom of the fireplace. When the remains were carefully removed, investigators realized the body was positioned headfirst down the narrow chimney shaft, with arms pinned tightly to the sides. Whoever this young man was, he hadn't simply fallen in. He was wedged there. It didn't take long before speculation began among the officers. Was this an accident? A cruel prank gone wrong? Or had someone forced him inside? The remains were transported to the Pine Hollow coroner's office. DNA testing and dental records were used to make a positive match. When the results came back, they confirmed what many in town had feared. The body was that of Jonah Maddox, the boy who had vanished without a trace 7 years earlier. News spread quickly across Pine Hollow. For the Maddox family, the confirmation was devastating. His father, David, told reporters, "I prayed for closure, but I never imagined this. Not like this." The town was stunned. How could Jonah have ended up in the chimney of an abandoned cabin so close to home? And perhaps the most haunting question of all, why? For investigators, the case was anything but straightforward. The autopsy revealed no broken bones in Jonah's legs or feet, injuries that would be expected if he had fallen headfirst into the chimney. This suggested that he had entered willingly, or at least intentionally, in that position. Adding to the mystery, his arms were pinned tightly to his sides, a position that made it nearly impossible for him to climb down or even brace himself. There were also no signs of trauma, no fractures, no stab wounds, no gunshot injuries. It was as if Jonah had simply been placed there, alive, and left to die. Some theorized he may have tried to use the chimney as a hiding place, perhaps from someone chasing him, and became stuck. Others whispered darker theories, that he had been forced inside, trapped deliberately. One detail stood out most chillingly. The fireplace had been sealed off from the inside. A heavy metal grate and a piece of furniture had been pushed against it, as if someone wanted to make sure no one would notice what was inside. The discovery raised more questions than answers, and as investigators dug deeper into Jonah's final days, a web of strange rumors, suspicious acquaintances, and eerie coincidences began to surface. With Jonah Maddox finally identified, Pine Hollow police reopened his missing persons case, this time as a potential homicide. But the case was already 7 years cold, and the condition of the body made it nearly impossible to establish a clear cause of death. Investigators began by retracing Jonah's last known movements on the day he disappeared. Witnesses recalled seeing him walking through town that morning, backpack slung over his shoulder, as if he were heading out for one of his usual solo hikes. That was the last confirmed sighting. The cabin where he was found sat less than a mile from his home. This stunned detectives. How could a boy so close to his own backyard vanish for years without anyone checking that cabin more carefully? The answer was grim. The cabin had been boarded up and largely forgotten. To most, it was just another rotting relic of the old logging era. Nobody thought to search the chimney. As word spread, Pine Hollow was thrown into a frenzy of speculation. Some neighbors insisted Jonah must have been running from something that day. Maybe a person, maybe something darker. Others believed he had simply been exploring the cabin and, in a moment of miscalculation, tried to climb down the chimney as a prank or shortcut, only to get trapped. But there were details that didn't fit. Why would Jonah choose such a narrow, dangerous space to climb into? Why head first? And who had sealed the fireplace from the inside after he was trapped? Detectives turned their focus to Jonah's circle of acquaintances. Among the names that surfaced was Ethan Ward, a troubled young man a few years older than Jonah. Ethan had a history of violence and had been known to hang around the same abandoned cabins and party spots in the woods. Several locals recalled rumors that Ethan and Jonah had argued shortly before Jonah vanished. Others claimed Ethan once bragged about knowing what really happened to Jonah, though he never said more. Ethan was questioned, but with no physical evidence linking him to the chimney, police had little to hold him on. He denied any involvement, insisting Jonah's death was just a tragic accident. With limited hard evidence, investigators were left with competing theories. 1. Accidental entrapment. Jonah, perhaps seeking shelter or a place to hide, attempted to enter the cabin through the chimney. Once inside, he became wedged and couldn't free himself. His muffled cries would have gone unheard in the abandoned woods. 2. Foul play. Jonah was forced into the chimney, either as a sick prank or as part of something far more sinister. The sealed fireplace suggested someone knew he was inside and wanted to keep him there. 3. Voluntary hiding. Some suggested Jonah may have been hiding from someone or something when he tried to squeeze into the chimney. But if so, what was he hiding from? And why was the cabin, so close to his home, the place he chose? Each theory had problems. The accident theory didn't explain the sealed fireplace. The foul play theory lacked suspects or evidence. And the voluntary hiding theory only raised more questions than it answered. Years later, the case of Jonah Maddox remains one of Pine Hollow's most haunting mysteries. His family finally had answers to where he had gone, but not to why. The image of a boy trapped upside down in a chimney lingers in the minds of everyone in town. A grim reminder that sometimes closure doesn't come with peace. For investigators, the discovery in that abandoned cabin was not the end of a mystery, but the beginning of one. The discovery of Jonah Maddox's body should have been the final chapter in his story. But for those who loved him, and for the investigators who pieced together his final moments, it was anything but closure. Too many questions remain unanswered. Why was Jonah inside a chimney at all? Did he climb in himself, or was he placed there? If it was an accident, why did the fireplace appear to be sealed off afterward? If it was foul play, who could have done it? And why leave him in such a cruel position? Each piece of evidence only deepened the mystery. The lack of trauma on his body suggested he hadn't fought back, at least not violently. The absence of broken bones made the theory of him falling headfirst implausible. And yet the position of his body, wedged tightly, arms pinned, was nearly impossible to explain as voluntary. Even seasoned detectives admitted the case left them baffled. One officer, speaking years later under condition of anonymity, said, "It was like something out of a nightmare. I've seen murders, suicides, accidents, you name it. But this made no sense then, and it makes no sense now." For Jonah's family, the truth was harder still. His father, David, who had spent 7 years clinging to hope, now struggled with the reality of his son's final moments. "I prayed he was alive somewhere. Maybe he ran off. Maybe he was lost. To know he was here all along, so close to home, trapped like that, it breaks me in ways I can't put into words." Jonah's younger sister, Emily Maddox, recalled leaving food at the edge of the woods in the first weeks of his disappearance, convinced he might be wandering nearby. The knowledge that her brother was instead trapped and alone in a chimney just beyond their reach was almost too much to bear. For years, the Maddox family had been sustained by hope. Now they were left with only horror. Pine Hollow never forgot. The cabin where Jonah was discovered was eventually demolished, but even that did little to erase the memory. Locals say the woods still carry a sense of unease, as though Jonah's spirit lingers in the silence of the pines. The story became a cautionary tale whispered to teenagers around campfires. Don't wander too far. Don't play near the abandoned cabins. Don't tempt the dark corners of the forest. But beneath the folklore lies a chilling reality. A boy went missing, and when he was finally found, the circumstances defied explanation. In the end, the tragedy of Jonah Maddox lies not just in his death, but in the mystery that is surrounded. His case remains unsolved, not because the body wasn't found, but because the truth of what happened in that cabin may never be known. Theories will always circle. Some are grounded in reason, an accident, a miscalculation. Others drift into the sinister, claims of foul play, whispers of things darker than coincidence. But the facts remain simple and haunting. Jonah walked into the woods one spring morning and never returned. 7 years later, he was discovered upside down in a chimney, only a mile from his home. And the questions, why there? Why that way? Why never found sooner? Linger like shadows over Pine Hollow. This has been the story of Jonah Maddox, the teenager whose disappearance ended with an unthinkable discovery in the chimney of an abandoned cabin. A case that leaves us with more questions than answers. If you found this story chilling, don't forget to subscribe to Criminal Minds Archives, where we continue to bring you the darkest, most mysterious true crime cases from around the world. Turn on notifications so you never miss the next investigation. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and remember, sometimes the truth hides in the unlikeliest places.